Spain expels 25 Russian diplomats for considering them a threat. NATO chief Stoltenberg says Russian troops are leaving the Kyiv area but not leaving Ukraine. He says the alliance believes, as long suspected, that Russia does intend to try to create a land bridge between Donbass and occupied Crimea. NATO Secretary-General, we expect more Russian escalation against Eastern European countries. We see that China has been unwilling to condemn Russia's aggression and has joined Moscow in questioning the right of nations to choose their own path, Stoltenberg. Zelensky on Orban, I called him, invited him, offered to meet with him. He was afraid, I'm sure of it. He might take it as an offense and say, I'm not afraid of anyone. He is afraid of Russia's influence on his state. This influence exists, whether he likes it or not. NATO, we call on all allies to provide more weapons to Ukraine. NATO Secretary-General Stoltenberg says alliance determined to supply more weapons to Ukraine, adding they will do more for partners such as Georgia and Bosnia, vulnerable for Russian threats and interference. Stoltenberg, we will not recognize Russia's occupation of Ukraine, especially its control of the Crimea. Ursula von der Leyen on fifth package of sanctions, won an import ban on coal from Russia, worth €4 billion per year, cutting another important revenue source for Russia to a full transaction ban on 4 key Russian banks, among them VTB, the second-largest Russian bank. Ursula von der Leyen on fifth package of sanctions, 3A ban on Russian and Russian-operated vessels from accessing EU ports and a ban on Russian and Belarusian road transport operators. 4 further export bans, worth €10 billion, in crucial areas, advanced semiconductors, machinery and transport equipment. 2 Russian T-72B3 tanks advancing from Izium to Barvinkov were destroyed by the Ukrainian forces. Russian Orlan-10 was shot down in Popasna. Speaking to the press before departing for Brussels, Atsek Blinken says the atrocities in Bucha are not the random act of a rogue unit. It's a deliberate campaign to kill, to torture, to rape, he says. EU declares a number of Russian diplomats persona non grata, Foreign Policy Chief Borrell. U.S. General Mark Milley, we are witnessing the greatest threat to peace and security of Europe, perhaps the world in my 40 years of service in uniform. Says U.S. is at inflection point in defending world order. More than 4.2 million have fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion, according to @Refugees. That's nearly 10% of the country's pre-war population. The overwhelming majority have gone to Poland. Estonia will expel 14 of Russia's consular staff and close consular offices in Narva and Tartu, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on Tuesday. Swedish prosecutors have opened a preliminary investigation into possible war crimes in Ukraine and urged witnesses to come forward, the Swedish prosecution authority said on Tuesday. Guterres, Russian war in Ukraine led to great loss of life and destruction of infrastructure. Poland's FM at Rau-Zbigniew after a meeting with UK FM at Trussell's, Russia has completely lost all credibility. A country that commits war crimes should be isolated on the international area, punished and held accountable. We are in favor of severe sanctions against Russia. Slovenia demands reduction of staff at Russian embassy in Ljubljana, summons ambassador over Bucha killings. Ukrainian forces destroyed a Russian fuel truck with a Stunya PATGM strike. Zelensky addresses the UN. Martin Griffiths, ground and air attacks have made life almost impossible for many civilians in Ukraine. Speech to the UN Security Council from Ukraine's President Zelensky, they shot and killed women and children. Civilians were crushed by tanks while sitting in their cars. Women and children raped and killed in front of their children. Russia wants to turn Ukraine into silent slaves, adds at Zelensky UA. They are looting everything starting with food and gold earrings. Show other war criminals in the world how they will be punished, at Zelensky UA tells UN Security Council. Zelensky also references MH17 and Syrian war chemical weapons, to give examples of Russia denying the proven facts. He tells the UN, it is 2022. We have conclusive evidence. We have satellite evidence. We give maximum cooperation with journalists and investigators. The massacre of Bucha is only one of many, adds at Zelensky UA, saying dozens of other Ukrainian communities have suffered similar to Bucha. Zelensky, the UN watched and did not want to see the occupation of Crimea, the war against Georgia, and how Russia was preparing the basis for other conflicts. The Russian military and those who gave the criminals orders must be brought to justice, in a venue similar to the Nuremberg Tribunal, demands at Zelensky UA. UN says credible claims Russia has used cluster ammunition in populated Ukraine areas. Zelensky, I want to remind Russian diplomats that Adolf Eichmann did not go unpunished. Israeli Foreign Minister Lapid on Bucha massacre, Russia committed war crimes against a defenseless civilian population. Zelensky, in a speech before the UN Security Council, calls for the exclusion of Russia from the UN Security Council. UK Foreign Secretary at Trussell's in Warsaw, Poland has always been clear-eyed about Russia. You have understood Putin's malign intent. You were right. We agree the only way to end this war is for Putin to lose in Ukraine. We agree to step up our sanctions. Explosion reported over Belgorod. Melitopol, Russian troops searching residences of activists during night. A missile on the route to Ternopil was shot down over Kremenets and has fallen on the warehouse with mineral fertilizers. As ammonia concentration in the groundwater increased, local residents were asked not to use water wells. Russian troops searching and kidnapping Ukrainian activists in Prikholatny, Fedorivka, Veliky Berlik. Russian army shelling Mariinka with MLRS Grad.
Огонь! 330!
Man from Hoholiv village of Kyiv region was killed as result of blast of explosive device left by Russian troops in his car. U.S. is training Ukrainians outside of Ukraine including here in the U.S., per at SecDef and General Milley. No training inside Ukraine or Poland, they say. Washington will ban all new investments in Russia from Wednesday. Ukrainian border guards return to Ivanki and Malachivka units in Kyiv region, which were attacked by the Russian army on February 24. Explosion occurred at Krasnogvardaysky district of Belgorod region. Head of district confirms, though denies it was a result of shelling. Servicemen of the National Guard arrived at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. They took the object under their protection. Ukrainian health minister, Russian forces attacked 279 hospitals and destroyed 19 of them completely since the beginning of the invasion. 3,846 people were evacuated today to safe areas, Deputy PM of Ukraine. Explosion reported near Novomoskossk. Head of Lviv Regional Administration says air defense engaging aerial targets, asking civilians to stay in shelters. We've only seen potentially the tip of the iceberg of atrocities committed in Ukraine by Russia, says at Press Sec. Zelensky asks Spain for help with weapons and sanctions, and compares what happened in Ukraine with April 1937 and the bombing of Guernica. Explosion in the area of Radakiv, head of Lviv Regional Administration. Explosion reported near Koziatin in Vinnytsia region. Shelling in Kharkiv, multiple explosions and fires already reported. Responding to it, P. Widakiswara, who asks about China state media's reporting on the Ukraine war, at Press Sec says if you're repeating the propaganda of Russia and Putin, you're on the wrong side of history. Ukrainian Railways Company evacuated 15,000 people from Pokrovsk, Kramatorsk, Sloviansk and Lozova today. India condemns killings in Ukraine's Bucha in apparent hardening of stance.